Hey, Melissa.
Hi, how you going?
Good, awesome. Okay, so I'm
Can you
going.
hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ainslee Chats with live version. And we had a bit of a false start earlier with the gremlins trying to work things out, but we're back live now. And so last week I did my first live episode of Ainslee Chats with for International Day of People with Disabilities, and quite a few people listened to it and found it interesting. So I thought I'm going to do it live again. And this week I am joined by Melissa Stehr from Access Advisor Australia, who I had a chat with yesterday about her business, and it was such an interesting chat that I wanted to have. I wanted to have Melissa back on the podcast today to chat and just share with everybody. So hi, Melissa, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, welcome. So just introduce yourself, and let the listeners know who you are and what you do, etc.
Yeah, sure. Look, well, yeah, as you said, my name is Melissa Stehr. I live in Melbourne, Victoria. The company that we're talking about that you mentioned is Access Advisor Australia. The company came about approximately sort of 4 years ago.
Sorry, your voice
Sorry,
a little bit.
apologies. Hello.
Yeah, it's a little bit better. Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The company was founded in 2015. The inception of it was all due to a wonderful man over in the UK, Rob Trent. I was just spending some time on Twitter one evening, and I had seen a tweet that he had made in relation to his company, Access Advisor UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw it. I went on, had a look on his website. I thought it was a fantastic resource for people with disabilities, for people with accessible needs all across the UK. And I remember replying, just saying, this is a really great platform. I love what you're doing. I know plenty of people in Australia that would benefit from having a resource like this. And at that time, I went looking myself for what was available, and it was very limited in the sense that there wasn't an Australian wide platform.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a few days later he responded. We chatted a little bit, and then he eventually one night wrote back to me and said, "Well, why don't you do something about it?" And that had to be one of the most challenging comments I've ever read. So I'm a pretty stubborn person naturally. I couldn't come up with an argument. The typicals are, I've got no time, I've got no money. How would I even do this? I don't know what I'm doing. How would I start?
Yeah.
And that's really, it was a scary proposition. I remember talking to my husband about it, just saying, I'm not sleeping. This is frustrating me. What do I do? And he just said, look, you can do it. Give it a shot. Why wouldn't you? If you know it can impact and change one person's life for the better, then what's your excuse? So then that was sort of the birthing process of Access Advisor Australia. And it's been a slow and steady pace. I do have a full-time job. This is sort of my passion on weekends and nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, look, it's been a fantastic journey to this point, and I expect it to continue to be. I've met some pretty incredible people out of it, heard about wonderful experiences, and been able to make some pretty fantastic connections with people. And being a part of something that is even just my little square in my world of increasing awareness for inclusivity and accessibility is something that I am naturally passionate about. My husband and I have a background of more than 15 years in the healthcare industry, in the sectors across many areas of that sort of fall under that disability word in that sense. So to be able to be a part of something that can impact for the positive is something that definitely drives me. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So can I ask what got you both into the disability sector in the first place?
Yeah. Look, my husband previously, going years back,
Yeah.
sort of 20 years back, has always been in healthcare. He was worked for a physiotherapy company, predominantly in sales, senior management positions, and I've always sort of had an administration background, bookkeeping, that sort of thing. So when we moved to Melbourne, must be about 15, 16 years ago now, I believe, we eventually bought a healthcare company. Predominantly at that time, the main sectors were aged care and hospitals. And so over the years, it's definitely grown more into the residential sector, especially with NDIS coming on board years ago.
Yes.
And even now more so as well, there's the SDA arm as well. So we've always sort of had that history and involvement in the sector. But for me personally, my favourite part of the business has always been the residential and connecting with people in the community, getting to see the impact that through the services we provide, the care, the consideration that we've been able to give to the clients, carers, stakeholders as well, has been my absolute highlight, because you get an immediate response, you get an immediate gratification that you are actually helping them do exactly what they want to do. And you're finding a solution. We can't always find a solution. And then, if we can be a little part of that, that's fantastic. But if we can give them one little part of a solution that they need for an everyday challenge, then, I've always sort of thought of it as very privileged, I suppose, in a lot of ways. Very privileged. These people welcome us into their homes and allow us an opportunity to invest in them and be a part of their journey, and that's not something that I take lightly at all. So
that's lovely. I love hearing that. It's just I like it's, I guess, like being a person with a disability, like you come across some people that I guess you can tell when they're just in it sort of I guess for the money side of things.
Just a job, yes.
Yeah. And exactly, just as a job. Whereas like coming across people like yourself that are doing it because you love it, that really makes a whole lot of difference. Something interesting that we were talking about yesterday that I wanted to talk about today was we were talking about how going to businesses and having that conversation about them, about their business not being accessible. And we're talking about how, like, as a person with a disability, I find it hard having those conversations because I get it's too expensive. And so obviously, I mean, for myself as an individual, and I guess because of my experiences in the past, I think, okay, so I'll just leave it because I don't want to be a burden. Maybe that's not that's my experience. So it's interesting, like, because we were talking about how you, as a person with a disability, without a disability, having, like, you're able to have sort of different conversations. So I'd love to hear, like, tell everyone about what's been your experience and how you've gone about, like, those conversations.
Yeah, well, I remember it was actually quite enlightening to me when you said that you have experienced a situation where you've been speaking to someone and talking about accessibility and, would they consider making some changes and giving that bit of positive feedback in that sense. And from their perspective, they were sort of making it just about you. And that was that actually sort of blew my mind a little bit. I was like, whoa, why would they assume that you're just there all about you? You're there because you know what the impact can actually truly mean? It's not just about you as an individual. It's every person that has to deal with any accessible needs. So why would they just singular, address it on that level as an individual person? That's not right. So I would have to say, through some of the conversations that I have, and as I said yesterday, where I have found, I suppose, the most hesitation is predominantly in hospitality, to be honest. It's the cafes, it's the restaurants, where if I have that discussion with them about have they considered having a consultant go in and do an audit, or just even review where their accessibility needs could be improved, they immediately, without even asking questions, without even wanting further understanding or education around any of that, they immediately go, oh, no, we can't afford it. No, we possibly can't afford it. My thought is, wait, I didn't even say anything else. All I'm saying is if you're going to be a listing on the site, or if someone wants to go visit your restaurant or cafe, they want to know, from my experience anyway, they want to know that they are going to be welcomed just the same as anyone else through that door, that you are not going to look at them and do a huff and a puff and go, well, we don't know where we're going to put you. I've heard of those stories, and I have witnessed that happening to a friend before, and it bothered me. It really, I mean, she's a beautiful human. She was very, almost, it's sad, but she was used to it. So for her, she was just like, don't worry about it. And me, I was offended. I was like, doesn't that annoy you? Aren't you offended? And she said, don't worry about it. It's fine. It happens all the time. And I just, that for me is really frustrating, because they're not doing it intentionally, in the sense that there's malice attached to it. I understand that there's just the lacking of awareness from their part, or education. I do understand, and I accept that. I think what's the disheartening thing for me is when you try to, create that monologue of using those keywords, when the minute you say accessible or disability access, anything like that, those words, it's almost like I feel they physically clamor up. Yeah, it's like, wait, where did you go? Hold on. All of a sudden there's a distraction in the back. The coffee machine's going, or someone needs them, and it's like, wait, hold on. You don't realise that you are missing out on so many fantastic patrons coming through your door. And if you're here for customer service, you're here to make let people experience your great food and your great custom, then why are you excluding other people? Why aren't you here for everyone? So that's been my experience, definitely. Look, on the whole, you can generalise, and I don't, it's not good to do that, but on the whole, I would say predominantly it's been hospitality, and when it's more accommodation, event places, facilities where you've got cinemas, libraries, they're a little bit more on board and they're interested, and which I really implore, and I want to keep encouraging. I would like to see councils and major funding bodies get on board to actually start to put a little bit of, pressure is a bit of a negative word, I suppose, but pressure is good. Sometimes we need it. And
absolutely.
I don't know. You sort of worry sometimes about offending or being too aggressive, but the reality is, if these establishments, if society aren't challenged, if they aren't going to be accountable for their lack of education or understanding, or even desire to have a little bit of change and learn more, then when will they ever? They won't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know how you feel, but I sometimes think, you should be accountable. If that's really your opinion, then please put it on your door so everyone knows that when they come through that door, that you have chosen not to make your facility accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
That you have, that you believe that, that ramp is going to cost too much and that's not worth it, to make sure that the family that does have a person with accessible needs or the person that does require the wheelchair, they can't get in. Put that on your door and then see how good you feel, because apparently that's, so I know that sounds a little bit gruff, but I'm passionate about it. I really want change.
Yeah, and that's effectively what they're doing. I mean, and I guess they don't think of it that way. Well, they don't think of it that way. But I was thinking, I remember we spoke about a particular restaurant that I went to yesterday, that we spoke about yesterday, sorry. And I won't go into details about that too much, but there was another one I thought of as you were just speaking before, and it was interesting. Went along with my mother and her friends, I think it was, and we went to this restaurant, and this restaurant doesn't exist anymore. But the got there, and the waitress comes up. I'm in the front of this group, so I'm like smack bang in front of her. Anyway, she's like, she looks around, she goes, "Oh, a table for 4." And then Mum goes, "No, 5," points to me. And then she's like, "Oh, I didn't see her there." I'm right in front of her, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't see her there."
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
See, and I'm sure that just would have been, state of mind, just wouldn't have even considered what she was actually saying at that time. But from the other end, I don't think, how do you say that without straight away going, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, that was very rude of me."
and she didn't, she just, it was just, it would have just been something she just said, and that was she didn't even think of it. So
hopefully she walked off and was embarrassed. I'm hoping that's what she did. She walked away and Mostly said, "I can't believe I just said that."
Yeah, I think my mother sort of gave her a look. I can't remember. That was a while ago, so I can't remember. But it was.
I'm sure your mum did, because if that was my child, no matter what age they were, I would have given a look for sure.
So those kind of things have happened, but so it's and I guess for now as well, with COVID, from going through, I went shopping the other day for Christmas, and it was the first time I'd been to any shops since before March. I found that interesting, going through Kmart and Target, and how they were not crowded, as in, so you know how you got all the racks and all that stuff. Normally, they'd be close together and stuff, and there was whole areas where there was barely anything there. And they're doing that for social distancing. But for me, it was just oh, cool, lots of room to move around. So
this is great.
Things that are happening at the moment that I know will go back to normal, unfortunately, but they're actually.
I was just thinking that I'm sure it sort of puts you in the mindset to go, well, if it was possible and doable for COVID, then why isn't the cause of making sure you're inclusive throughout your store, why isn't that an important reason for keeping it that way anyway?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can obviously do it, and why wouldn't you keep it that way, to say, you know what, we're going to stand up and say, we've noticed that this has been beneficial, and we're going to continue to do this to support full inclusivity throughout our store, to make it easy. So then you can easily get around and not worry about, clipping the side of shelving or knocking anything over, that you can comfortably just go shopping on your own and not worry about getting in between aisles.
Yeah, exactly. And
it would be nice to think that they would, but
I even love going through clothes shops, and so the clothes racks are also close together, and then they're giving you dirty looks as you go through that, because you're touching the clothes, and it's
not much you can do. It's they could change, they could do something different.
Exactly.
That would be nice.
It's always about, and that's been the interesting thing. It's the way society thinks. There's the whole medical model of disability, which I've spoken about before, which we now think about the social model of disability, and that's it. So you can see that people are still stuck in their way of thinking, that that, you know, the person with the disability is the problem, and
Yes.
you're not
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to spend money at your store, but guess what? Like, these are the stores
Mm.
like I actually do spend money at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. I was talking to Braden earlier. He's one of my sons, and
Mhm.
I was saying, and I was actually reflecting on some of our conversation yesterday, and just how there were so many, like listening to your prior podcast that you did last week. There were so many little nuggets of information for me that, out of an hour of speaking to you, it without us knowing, if we allow ourselves, it injects this little bit of knowledge, and the little seed gets planted and it grows,
Yeah.
and you start to see things so differently.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love talking to people, and my mind, you get that little shift. Your perspective is sitting here because this is the bubble that I've been living in. But when I speak to someone and they plant that little seed, I'm like, whoa, okay, that's just changed my whole perspective. Now I'm seeing it actually in such a different way that I know every time I walk forward now, I'm seriously changed with my thought process.
And even hearing you say that yesterday that again, it was the same thing with me. Hearing
mm,
you say that about that podcast was the
mm,
same with me.
mm,
I was like, oh wow, I didn't actually. I mean,
I
these are just
know.
I've just ramble on.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and I
No, it
was,
was so true. When I was listening to it, I just,
yeah,
as I said to you, that it wasn't the meaning behind what you were talking about, but you
yeah,
initially, when I first got the goosebumps, it's when you were talking about, the having a person with a disability in senior management, and you were expressing that it's not very common, because typically people know and make those assumptions around a person with a disability that they're susceptible to
yes,
illness.
yeah,
And that just, when I heard that, I was like, yes, yes, of
mm,
course, yeah, that's nothing that I'm surprised to hear. But
mm,
what it then sent me on the trail of was, but look at where you are now. Look at
mm,
where you've gone now, knowing that you've had to come through that,
mm.
what you've been able to achieve. And that's, like we were chatting yesterday, is
Yes,
how many people in your situation and circumstance are in that same situation, wanting, desiring it, knowing they are damn capable, knowing
mm,
they're deserving,
mm,
but cannot find a way to break through that ceiling because
yeah,
they know they're going to be interpreted as a lesser value person
mm.
than the person that's maybe sitting across from them that doesn't have the disability.
Yeah, and
You know,
it was only for me, it was like having a nervous breakdown and knowing that I couldn't go back to the
mm,
situation that had resulted in a nervous breakdown. And
mm,
it was from that I was just like, okay, so I need to do this now. Like
yep,
I've got no choice. I've got to do this now. And then yeah,
mm,
as I've sort of progressed since starting the business in 2019, like originally I was going to do it so that everything was online. There was no talking to people. It was all going to be on email or whatever.
yep,
And then, yeah, then then I started to realize, no, I actually need to start talking, because as
mm,
you were saying yesterday, it's a slow process to get people to understand what they need
mm,
to change. Isn't just a matter of saying this is what you need to change. It's about explaining to people why it needs to be changed, and
mm,
that's a slow process. So that's
yeah,
when I was
yep,
like, okay, so I'll just bite the bullet. And yeah, so I've certainly, yeah, they like, even like podcasts,
yes,
certainly something I wouldn't have even considered doing, say, like 2 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're doing it, and that's the brilliant stuff. Sometimes we don't realise how far we've come,
Mm,
and I feel personally myself that um, our society, whether it's the Australian way, we don't allow reflection for ourselves to look at the brilliance within what we can achieve
yeah.
as the individual. And I'm sure there's many people that they get boxed in for different reasons. Not even if they're a person with a disability. There's areas where, whether it's a sector in your industry, your family, friends, you get boxed in, and we sometimes fall for that trap. We go with it. I'm definitely a person that has done that. So I'm, at this stage, especially with this journey with Access Advisor Australia, of just stretching myself, allowing myself to sort of step into that fear a little bit more, and not listen to what I perceived was the box where I needed to fit in. Just stepping out a little bit more. And I suppose it's something that is really important to speak about in a way, because even yourself yesterday, when I was talking about you and your achievements, it's interesting how shy we get about being upfront and honest, isn't it? It's like that. Think about all those things, what you have got, what you, yes, with your company, what you're achieving is fantastic. Your consulting, what you advocate is fantastic, but there's also the whole left side there where the impacting, for example, young teenagers. If there's kids going through school, guidance counsellors, what are they telling those young students? What they're able to do, what they're able to achieve? Are they telling them based on what they can physically see, what they physically view, or are they choosing to allow them to search and dream for themselves in that sense? Because sometimes we don't do that. So allowing that sort of platform as well is great, I think. But if in the sense of getting out there, advising, educating, it's one of the things as well. We keep talking about it, but in our discussion yesterday is the amount of people in the industry that haven't had exposure, actual on the ground exposure, with working around, supporting, caring for people with disabilities, but they've been trained to do it, and without the experience of considering seeing the person, talking to the person instead of preference focusing on the disability, getting to know what that person wants, what they want to do for the day, where they want to go, where they want to visit, do they want to travel, and then working towards that, instead of focusing on the actual disability that's in play,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Through some of your methodologies that you've used when you are doing your consulting, what have been the main barriers that you have found when you're talking and educating people?
So I guess looking at what I do, so I guess, so I do a range of different things. So I do speaking to businesses, and I'm just sort of trying to think, because there's different barriers in different areas. But I guess throughout my consulting, so what I do with the consulting is I help businesses identify. So I consult, I call it disability space. So I consult with businesses who do things in the disability space. So not necessarily disability sector businesses, but they are some of my clients. So, and I'm about helping them identify ways, identifying where they need to improve to help them do what they're doing, to make sure it's as effective as possible, because the end goal is helping people with disabilities. So for me, I'd say the barriers that I've identified through those, the common barriers that they've come up through that would be that it's a lack of, the plan, I guess, the lack of planning. So not knowing what identifying exactly what the needs are of the people, for them to be able to do what they need to do. So for example, it could be if you've got say for example a committee, so a group of people that have to meet to advise on things, making sure that they've all got access to the technology that's required for them to be able to do that, as well as identifying so that, yeah, so basically looking at also if you're looking at inductions, for example, making sure that the inductions, not that just the induction is done, but make sure the induction is effective and that people have actually learned something from that induction. So when you follow those things up at the early stage, excuse me, 1 second. Okay, sorry. All right, so yeah, when you follow things up, oh man, my throat's going. Okay, so yeah, oh man, I don't know how radio announcers do that. Anyway, so yeah, basically looking at things at the very beginning to make sure that everything from that point onwards is going to go as smoothly as possible. Otherwise, there's things come up later on and people have missed out on being able to do things. Missed out on being able to provide feedback about things because they haven't had the access to it. So there's all these little things that people need to think of, and it's really about getting it done in the early process. Even like say with the disability service provider, if they can get things done, it's the same thing. If they can get things nutted out at the very beginning of either on taking of a client or onboarding of a new staff member to do disability support work, if they can get those things ironed out at that stage, that then will mean that there's very little chance for issues to arise later on down the track.
No, that's cool. I imagine through your experience that you've had up until now, there must be some points, are they? I mean, I'm making assumptions here, but I imagine there must be some points where, do you shake your head? Do you sort of go, really? Are we really? I mean, this is 2020. Like, are we really here?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm good to know that, because I'm thinking, geez, I hope so. I'm assuming so, because I do it all the time. I'm like, really, people, come on.
Yeah, I tell you what, like it's frustrating because like accessibility and inclusion and all these buzzwords they're thrown around. So they're like, they're a hot topic at the, and so you would think that because they're a hot topic, that disability and all of those accessibility, inclusion, all that kind of stuff would be at the front of mind of everything, and it's not. So it's like, why are we even why are we having all these what's the point of, and I get like, what's the point of having all these conversations if nothing's going to be done about it? So that really frustrates me. And like, I got to there was a LinkedIn Live the other day between Bree Gorman of Bree Gorman Consulting and Christina Ryan from the Disability Leadership Institute. And Christina was talking about how people with disabilities are 40 years behind. Now, this is really, 40 years behind women when it comes to equality, and 10 years behind Aboriginal people when it comes to equality. So, and I'm 43, so I'm thinking, well, that's been my whole life. So what's the whole point of this thing if we're not going to get to equality? So, so I had a day of like, what's the point of this? I might as well just give it up. And then it was like, well, no, that's why we need to keep continuing on. Like, people with disabilities, the disability rights movement's been going on since the 60s, which I was privileged enough not to know until this year when Crip Camp came out. And like, I was just very naive about the whole disability, disability movement until, like, seeing people like Stella Young. Prior to that, I was just sort of like, I just went through life. Okay, so this is what it's like, there's things going to happen, just brush them off and move on. But so now it's like, okay, so I can see that, the work is still unfortunately vitally important. But I would love to get to a stage like we were, that there's talk about an accessible and all accessible playground or something like that in my local area.
Yes.
And I was like, well, okay, how about I'd like to get to a stage where we can just stop with the name of all inclusive or all abilities and just say,
just is.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's a playground. You can go. You don't have to search for it. You don't have to look for it. It is, because
it is.
That's the minimum standard.
Yeah,
that is how we are inclusive. Yeah, we don't need to determine it as inclusive. We just need to build it that way. That's the minimum design.
Exactly, and so that's where I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get to that point. But yeah, that's where I'd like things to go, because I'm just I guess so sick. Like, even I got to a stage where I was sick of, like, I didn't like the word disability.
Yes.
And now I'm fine with it. But yeah, it's just like, I'm just a person. Yes, I'm a person with a disability, but I'm just a person. But yeah, I mean, I think differently of it now. But yeah, that was just like, why it is that a person with a disability, why is that necessary? And
why the label?
It's even like,
what was the changing point?
So for me, I guess I remember going. It would have been like in my late 20s. Oh, I lose track of time these days because
me too. It's an age thing. I think it's always going to happen.
I'm very blend into one or the other. But it was basically, I used to get really, 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 really shitty at people saying, Ainslee disability, whatever, or I guess not shitty that they were saying that, but I was thinking, they're just thinking of me as Ainslee, the girl with the disability. And so I was just me. And so, but I think, and it wasn't till when I started, just prior to the NDIS, I started to, I was on this lead bar and food committee for Geelong. And through that, I met some other people with disabilities and I hadn't been in contact with people with disabilities for I don't know, over 10 years or so, because you don't, after you finish at school, you don't go to clinics or anything like that. And so it wasn't, and so, I guess I was, I had been seeing for all these years, like, all this stuff about disability, and it was just making me cringe. I was just wanting to separate myself from it. And then when I met people with disabilities, I was like, oh, okay. So and I started to think, okay, well, it's actually not so bad. Like, the idea, and I think it's just the way things are in the media, like presented in the media. It's just like, I didn't want to be associated with that kind of thing that I was seeing in the negative stuff I was seeing in the media. But so once I got to know these people, I was just like, okay. So now I'm I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Which is great. I'm sure that must have been, sort of a nice revelation for you to have that I suppose sense of peace with it, to go, it's not something I have to. It's like a love-hate relationship. It's there, but you don't like it. But now it's like, it is what it is.
And I think, like, probably the biggest thing was I was getting I was so sick of, so I think, like, back when I was working in the APS, and, like, people would come up to me and they'd be like, oh, did you see this thing? And it was about an article about a person with a disability. And I'm like, no. Nah. And it's, and so they keep bringing things to me saying, oh, I just see that person on the weekend. And I'm like, no, just because I've got a disability doesn't mean I'm necessarily interested in everything disability. Now I am. Now it's like all consuming because of because of where we are with society. But this was me back in my early 20s. I was just like, well, just because I've got a disability doesn't mean that I'm gonna like every single thing about disability. So so that's where I was like, okay, just keep away from me about disability. And that's where I think it all sort of, and even like, going through high school and not being able to do certain subjects because they wouldn't give me the assistance that was necessary because it wasn't going to get me into a job that they desire they thought
They
it was,
were boxing you in for.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's all that it was. So I didn't like disability because I didn't like being boxed, and I didn't like what I thought people were thinking about me as a person with a disability. So
yeah. Which is
yeah.
interesting. That's what Braden said earlier. He said it's not the actual disability itself that's the problem. He said that's not what I see as a problem. He said the problem is society. They're the ones
Absolutely.
stopping people from doing what they want to do. They're the ones disabling people from achieving, excelling, experiencing.
Yep.
Society is doing this. It's got nothing to do with the person that does have, whether it's we were talking yesterday, which is so true and absolutely prevalent, is the invisible disability. That can be just as much a barrier as the visible, but for some reason, we have enough issue with the respecting and accepting the physical, never alone understanding and learning more about the invisible. And I know myself from even my own experiences and family members, and I know how absolutely debilitating mental health can be, and severe anxiety. It can be the difference between going out for a nice meal as a family to absolutely not, because there's too much noise and it's creating nervousness and anxiousness, and it ruins the moment, because we've had to be sitting right next to a door and people are coming in and out, or there's all of those barriers that are created from the people that don't want to acknowledge or be educated, or even stretch their mindset a little bit to go, well, hold on, well, look around. If you're a restaurateur or a cafe owner, why aren't you looking around going, yeah, I really should. I mean, I should be welcoming everyone. Yeah. Everyone should get the same damn smile, the same arms open, going, welcome, come in. Yes. Please make yourself, you pick the table. Where would you like to sit today?
Exactly, yeah. So, and it's not about like doing anything extra for that person. It's about that just treating that person like you would anybody else that comes in. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember I was
Absolutely.
thinking about, I was watching an episode of Ali G. Sacha Baron Cohen thing.
Yes.
And it was he went to a night. It was his character Bruno. Yeah, and he went to a nightclub. And he's talking to this nightclub owner, and he was taking the mickey out of the nightclub owner because the nightclub owner didn't realise it. And he asked this question. He goes, he said something about, like, people in wheelchairs and the stairs and stuff. And he goes, do you see many people with disabilities here? And the guy actually responded and said, no, and I'd hope they wouldn't come here. And I'm like,
what?
Yeah, and I found the guy on Instagram. I thought I'd love to talk to that guy, and I probably should find it again to have a discussion with him, because I'm just like, it wasn't even it wasn't a huge thing it wasn't about disability at all, but it was just a flippant comment that he made, and I was like, that's interesting. And so now I want to know, if he had a conversation with someone with a disability, would that change his mind, or is he still steadfast about having a city at his nightclub?
Because why not? It's no different to myself wanting to go out and enjoy music, which I love. I love music. I find it so therapeutic, and I couldn't live without music in the way, because I think it's such a great tool for any moment. It can rev you up, it can calm you down, it can get you in a nice moment of peace, especially when I'm driving in traffic. But everyone should be able to experience a nightclub. It shouldn't matter. But that's the whole mindset thing that we've reflected on, is it needs to improve. We're 2020. What the hell are people doing? Why aren't they stretching themselves? Right. Why does that cafe want to be the same damn cafe as it was 3 years ago? Improve yourselves. Get better. Do better. accessible business is smart business. It is,
Yes.
because you're basically presenting to your local community, to society, that you want to welcome everyone. You're not just in this just for the persons without disability. You're in this for every human that wants to enjoy a damn good meal. That's what you're in it for.
Yeah.
And it goes for saying, if they don't allow for access, then you're actually not in it for those people as well. Don't say you are, because you're not.
No, exactly.
One of my favourite restaurants, I will not say their name, I don't want to get in trouble, but I love seafood. I do love seafood. Everyone knows me. I'm a seafood hog. If it's around, I can sniff it a mile away. I do love going there, but every time I have been there, one of my pet hates is, because it's the minimum requirement, of having a disabled toilet. To get to this toilet, you have to walk down a small alleyway. It is inside the restaurant, but it's sort of a little alleyway, because they've got the fridges for the fresh seafood that you can buy, and you go down around in between the cabinet fridges and then the big floor fridges that they've got. You have to squeeze in between there, take a very sharp left turn, and as you're about to go in that one apparent disabled toilet, there are boxes there. And I'm not quite sure why the hell the manager would ever assume someone, even on crutches, could get through there. My mother, if she had, a walker, there's no way that she would be able to get through there.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming for them, it's not something they care about. It's not something they think about. And I think that's one of the biggest injustices of establishments is, well, we know the minimum is providing a disabled toilet.
Yeah.
All right, we'll create that bigger space toilet. We'll make sure we've got a grab rail there. Yes, that complies. Great, done. That's it. That's all they think about, is that disabled toilet. There's definitely some that have, ramps and full access, which is great. But I really, over the next few years, want to task all Australian establishments to really look at themselves and go, what are we doing here? We need to improve this to make sure that, the tourism industry in Australia, not right now, I know, but it's massive. And, even the international visitors and guests that come through our gateways normally, even the amount of those that do have a disability, they're missing out on beautiful parts of, whether it be Melbourne, Sydney, Queensland, because it's just not considered an important factor, whether it be at design process or it be after a refurb and retrofitting to allow. And the argument to say you can't afford to do it now, well, it costs a lot more to do it afterwards. So maybe we should be really enforcing the message of considering it at design. I've had some great discussions with a lady called Rachel Wymark. She owns a building consultant company. She lives up in Townsville. And she's got 35 years experience in the industry across UK and Australia, and building surveyor background. She has some fantastic numbers that she can present to any business owner, advising them of the actual numbers of the benefits of doing inclusive design at design stage. Yes, you can do it afterwards, but if you do it now, if you think like this now, and we all start to have that mindset to go, what are we doing here? What do we want to do, in the sense of who are we inviting? Who are we impacting? And put the design in place there. Speak to the professionals, get a consultant in, get someone who understands that sector, and then go with there, instead of just throwing together a design and then they think of something afterwards and go, oh, yeah, we've got the bathroom, but we need to make a disabled toilet as well, so let's throw a few grab rails in. That's one of the most disappointing things, to see establishments doing that, because I just think you're missing the mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been to one venue and I was speaking to a friend yesterday about this as well, in a presentation I did for a business. I went, so this building that we went to, they had a disabled toilet. That's wonderful. And then we were given a show around the area, and then to get up to another area where the printer was, there's a huge step there, and it's like, okay, so what are you going to do about that? Because I can't get up that every, like people are having to help me up there, but like that's not the point. That's like I love that people are helpful, but I want to be able to do things without actually having to ask for help all the time. So so it took about 6 months for a new ramp, or not that, but yeah, like for a new ramp. But it's just funny to me that it was thought it was accessible just because the toilet was there, and yet they still had that ramp. But yeah, one of the comments just come through, and I'm not sure if that's your partner, who said anyone with a disability is still a consumer. Smart businesses can benefit significantly by catering and welcoming this demographic. And I absolutely agree with that, because one thing, and I'm trying to find the figure at the moment, but I can't quite find it. Is I think it's like 1.3 trillion, or there's in the trillions of dollars globally, people with disabilities have spent that money. So, and even in Geelong, so I'm from Geelong, and even in Geelong, if you think about it, so technically, so people with disabilities were 20% of the population, and I think in the 18-19 financial year, it was something like we would spend about $1.4 million or something like this. I can't remember exactly what the figures are, so don't quote me on it, but it's just showing that we actually spend a hell of a lot of money. So, and yeah, we'd love to spend, and I mean, even for me, it took me 3 months to find a hairdresser. Once my previous hairdresser, I could no longer access. I'm not going to name them or anything, but yeah, so it took me 3 months to find another hairdresser that I could actually get into physically, because I need a seat that can be removed from the basin. So I put my wheelchair and slide into the basin, and so many hairdressers do not have that, and that to me is just like, at least one of those things should be. And I had a discussion with a hairdresser about that, a man who owns a salon, and he explained about how, and it was like you and I were talking yesterday, it's about bodies that they buy the salon chairs and the basins based on how many they can get into the salon, so that they can have that many clients. So it's just, and yet, and at the same time, because of that, then they're excluding unintentionally, because they're not even thinking about it, but they're excluding people like myself who cannot go there because of that reason.
Yeah. And the space thing, the space thing seems to definitely be an argument. I mean, that was a hairdressing salon, but I've definitely heard that in the accommodation sector, because one of the things that has been said to me is, for them to allow for an accessible room, essentially they're adding, a certain amount of feet on compared to the standard hotel room. So if they're, looking at a development, they want 300 rooms in there. If they're going to allow for maybe, 20, 30, say that 10%, they're going to allow for accessible rooms. They assume that is cutting into their margin, because for those 30 rooms, they could essentially have an extra 45 of the standard size.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when you hear that sort of argument, it's really hard to combat and
yes,
and
because
go
it makes
into
good business sense, doesn't it?
you sort of go, look, I can see that, I understand that.
Yes.
But what you also need to see is the value in allowing anyone and everyone to come to your hotel. And if you are known as that chain of hotels, if you are known as that type and style of establishment, where you are not just driven by that figure, not just driven by how many people you can have, it's actually about how many people can come through your door that have the best experience with your hotel chain instead of another one. It's such a difference, but it's a really hard argument to come up against, because in their mindset, the reality is they are there to make money. And typically in those situations, especially sort of corporate level, you're not talking with the person that's counting the dollars. You're not talking with the person that's got the wallet. You're talking to someone who is in a department that forwards on to another department and another department, and it loses its importance each time it gets transferred from one person's intent to another. So by the time the message is actually relayed to that person that counts the beans, it's not so important anymore. They go, you know what, we know we're doing this development. We've got shareholders to answer to. If it's publicly listed, you're already against it by that regard. But in saying that, I have seen that there is a shift in definitely some major hotel corporations, which is really cool to see, really good to see across the country, across the world, globally. Before the whole COVID thing, my husband and I did travel a bit with our business and across the UK and across Europe, and it is really cool to see some of the impact is actually, it is hitting the ground. It is making a difference. They are starting to change. But yeah, there are some times when I definitely, I know I'm not impacted. I'm not, for those listening, I'm not a person with a disability. I'm not impacted, but I am damn passionate about it, because ever since I was young, it's one of my pet. I'm a twin sister, actually. Hello, Felicity. I'm number 2, but the favourite. It's a very friendly joke we have regularly with our pets. I'm the favourite. But ever since I was young, I really struggled to accept a situation, an environment, a space, a person that singles people out. I can't deal with it. It really, emotionally, it upsets me. It always has. When you're sports day and they're picking out who's on their team. Man, I hated that. I really did, because I couldn't stand the last person. If I was the last person, I was really cool with it. That's fine. But to see someone standing there waiting to be picked, I still hate seeing that in my head, because that just breaks my heart. Because what you're actually doing, that person is going through all these emotions of going, pick me, don't make me last, there's something wrong with me if you're going to make me last, I hate that. It's a horrible thing. So
I remember, I remember that from primary school, and
do you?
I had some really cool teachers. It was interesting. After a few years, it's like, okay, I'm used to it. I get it. Oh, I'm not going to score your points or anything. But I had a couple of teachers, and what they would do, so I think they do their normal picking, and then they'd get to a point and they'd say, okay, well, you need to choose out of these 2 at this point. So it was me, they had to choose me and not just at the end. So I thought that was pretty cool. And there was another one where we used to play. Do you remember the game Rounders?
Yes.
Yes, I had to play. I hated that game.
Did you?
That stupid piece of wood. So what I would do is because I have, I throw pretty crap, and even my partner at the moment, you throw the ball at me and I flinch. I'm just one of those kind of girls.
That sounds like me.
So what the PE teacher would do is he'd get everybody to say, if I was throwing the ball, he'd get them all to turn around and put their head down between their legs and then try and bat it through their legs, just so that to make it difficult for them. Kind of and I really, really appreciated that, because otherwise it was just just get me out straight away.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. But I've never been that type of person, and I've always struggled with elements that support that, whether it be and a space, a workplace, yeah, I've struggled over years. I know you definitely did. We were chatting about that. Just nastiness, and it's not necessary. Why the hell? The more the merrier. That's how I was brought up. My parents
Mhm.
always said that. If we had some friends drop in, it's like the more the merrier. Everyone can stay. Everyone have dinner. Everyone
Yeah.
have lunch, and that's how I brought my kids up in my household. I love it. I still struggle with not over catering. I get in trouble often, but I just love to prepare food and have a massive spread. But to yeah, I think one of my pushes with being passionate about accessibility is I just see that there is such an injustice that it's accepted that we
Mm.
allow that to happen. And I really want it to change. I want
Yeah.
people's mindset to change. I want people to be empowered
Well, I
and
think,
and invest a little bit more, I'm not just
yeah.
talking money. I'm talking about common sense. I'm talking
Yes.
about respecting individuals.
Mm.
Um, and everyone deserves to feel welcome and
Yeah.
deserves the same treatment as the other person. You
Yeah.
can't.
And even like, I think this year, not just with COVID,
Mm,
but this year has shown us about change and how easy. So how
mm,
easy it is to change the way we
yeah,
think, which is
agreed.
what we would
Yep,
think necessarily would be hard. Like, for example, the Black Lives Matter stuff. So
yep,
when,
yep.
that happened, it's near the beginning, like before COVID, just before COVID, I guess, or at the
Mm,
start of COVID, when all that
yeah,
happened. And then people just started to go, okay, this is not acceptable anymore. So we're not going to, like even voice actors, they stopped doing
mm,
voice acting for roles where they were white, but they were playing black people,
mm,
so
mm.
to stop that, people, bands, even Dixie Chicks stopped, they dropped, they're now the Chicks, they dropped
Yep,
Dixie because it's offensive. So, and it's like, okay, so that everyone's done all this awesome stuff and the world hasn't blown up because, like,
yeah,
everyone,
yep,
would normally think, oh, we're going to have to change all this stuff, it's going to be the end of the world. Well, no, it's not. It's more inclusive. And
so true.
even like, we're now coming to understand, coming to accept, well, we now, as a society, accept, like, non-binary gender, all the gender pronoun stuff, that's acceptable um,
Mm,
it's, we now understand that we need to, if a person doesn't say so, we need to ask them what their gender pronouns are, and that's
yeah,
just a common courtesy. So there's all these things now where we're becoming more acceptable, more accepting,
yeah,
and we're understanding that doing so doesn't actually cost us anything, and it just makes people feel more included. So that
mm.
needs to happen in the disability community as well. I mean,
Yeah,
other areas also, but yeah, absolutely. I don't see why. Yeah, this kind of movement that we've seen
mm,
throughout those communities, we also need to see in the disability community, because it's not going to, like, yeah, okay, I can understand that it's going to cost a bit of money maybe to change some things, but in the end, you're going to make that back.
oh, absolutely. Yeah,
That's the
tenfold.
thing.
Because you'll have so many people supporting you because they'll
Yeah,
see what is behind the business.
exactly
And
right.
and
Yeah,
that means everything. If you've got a story, if you've got context behind those doors and you open them up and let people see what you're about and what's important to you, you'll be supported more and more.
yeah,
And I think that's the biggest message to any business is just making yourself aware of the little change that you can have, just little bit by bit over time can just have so many returns for you that
mm, yeah,
most people aren't even aware because they haven't gone there yet. They just
yeah,
haven't tried it. So,
yeah,
if they just tried it bit by bit, you don't have to pull down the whole facade and strip
mm,
strip the inside out. You can just
yeah.
take away one table, make it
And,
more
it's,
spacious,
and
make it more
even like,
comfortable.
yeah, and even like there was one thing, and there was, so, like, for example, I'm in the wheelchair,
Mm,
and so, like, yeah, touristy places that, so, they'd be hit and miss because of it. And
mm,
I'm used to that. I'm used to, like, just waiting in the car whilst my family went and saw something because I couldn't get to it, whatever. That's fine.
mm,
But yeah, there was this one time, um, and I wanted to share this one, was that, um, there's a place called Nelson Falls, and
Okay.
anyway, I was going through, so there was basically this walkway. So I went through this beautiful walkway in this forest, and it was flat. It was beautifully paved, and then for a second I stopped and I could hear this thing I heard this noise. I was like, oh. Anyway, I looked over to my right, and there was a waterfall, and I was like 26 or something at the time. And it was the first time I'd actually ever seen a waterfall in my life. And it was just like, wow, like, just because, and I was really close to the waterfall as well. And just so, by someone coming up with that design, I was able to experience something that I hadn't really been able to experience before. So just these little things, like, so yes, it's about the money, but people need to think about what's the experience, what are people going to be gaining out of doing so. So they need to look at what the positives are. So, and I think and I know it's hard for people to put themselves into other people's shoes when they don't understand it, but that's what really needs to happen is when people are thinking about the cost of things, they really do need to look at the benefits and if they don't know, like if they can't figure out any, certainly just contact people with disabilities and get their insights, because that's
there's resources there to be educated, to learn, and half the time it wouldn't even take as much as what they're making an assumption it would.
Exactly.
So just about asking those questions is the first step, isn't it?
Because I've had people go, oh my God, it's so easy. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
See, like it's all like, and I'd be like, so it didn't actually make a big deal, did it? And they're like, no, actually. So yeah.
Yep. Yesterday when we were talking, I was thinking about this afterwards. I was just talking about when you were young, going through teenage years at school, and who would you, like, reflecting back now, who was like a major role model for you when you were a young girl?
I don't know, but I do know that, like, I didn't like school. I liked some subjects. Overall, I just didn't like school because I thought I was stupid. But then now I realise it was more so the education. That's like anything about my teachers, but it was just the education that I guess just wasn't sufficient. But so for me, I didn't really think of having role models, but I do remember I was in, like, I can think year 9 or year 10 or something like that, and we spent some time, like, there was a group of people with disabilities, and we spent some time at Deakin University on campus just for a night or so. And for me, it was kind of like, university wasn't even something I was thinking of. I was just like, I want to get out of school, and that was it. So for me, I got to sort of meet a couple of people there, and even though I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, it was kind of like, oh, so there are actually options out there for me. So that's when I so I wouldn't say, cool. I don't know who those people were, but I'd probably say that kind of experience was probably where I was like, okay, start to think about things. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, because obviously it opened your eyes a bit more.
Sorry?
Obviously it opened your eyes a bit more in the sense of giving you the exposure of, well, these, you have options. You have opportunities. You can do anything. You don't need to, stay in that box where it might have been prior presumed you needed to be. But you can stretch out and do whatever you want to achieve, which
absolutely. And I think for me, like, I would say overall my biggest role model's probably been Stella Young. Is like, just like listening to Stella Young's speeches and the way she spoke, it was just like, there were so many hell yes moments, but I'm like, oh, just so and she's really sort of, I use a lot of her quotes in my presentations because they are what basically underpins a lot of why I do what I do and how I approach things the way I do. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you very much for coming on today and having a chat. It's been really interesting. So, and especially considering how much we spoke yesterday, it's really good to see that I think we could speak for hours, but
I feel the same. No, it's been great.
Before we leave, can you just tell people where to find you? I'll share your stuff. I've shared your stuff on social media, but if you could just let people know where to find you and
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so our website is Access Advisor. So it's www.accessadvisor.com.au. And also I'm on LinkedIn. So Access Advisor Australia, Access Advisor Oz, I believe it is, on LinkedIn. We've also got a Facebook page and a Twitter page as well. So if you pop those in, some people go first to Access Advisor UK, which is Rob. So if you get to Rob's page, say hi. Drop a hello from Australia for him. He is a really awesome human being. And then from there, you'll be able to find us because we partner up, and he has given me immense support over the years and encouragement and a lot of direction. So while I've got the platform, I definitely want to say hello and thank you to Rob, because I wouldn't be here without him. That's the truth. So but thank you. I've loved it. It's been really, really great. First experience.
Yes.
I hope it wasn't too obvious for everyone. It was my first.
No, well, it would have been obvious for me. This is the first live chatting with someone. So, it's been obvious for me because I've had a few hiccups at the start. But there is one thing I want to do. For people that don't know, this particular platform that I'm using for the podcast, you can add audio effects and music. So there is. I want to toy with these at the moment. So I'm just going to do something. One sec.
All right, cool.
Let me see if that's worked.
Ah,
there we go.
An
applause. So thank you very much.
Okay, I love that. That's very cool. I'm feeling special now.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Thanks very much. And everybody, if you have any questions for Melissa or I, just leave them at the bottom of my socials or Melissa's socials.
And
absolutely. I'll catch you next week. All right. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ainslee. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.